I probably know most people in here, and those of you who I don't know, just a 30-second introduction. Grew up in northwest Iowa on a crop farm, had pigs in high school. Durox. Durox bought me my first car. That's how I fell in love with pigs. And I was going to be a farmer. But through various circumstances, it wasn't going to work out. And so I said, well, the next best thing to being a farmer is to go to vet school so I can work with farmers. And so that's how I ended up in here today. This is not North Carolina, in case anyone was wondering. This is where I'm going to be in a couple weeks. And Matthew, where are you? Sorry you can't make the trip, but that's Sawtooth Mountain Range. But that's the morning in the Sawtooth Mountain Range in Idaho. And so we'll start with a morning shot and end with a evening shot. All right, here we go. So, title of the talk, what is PED saying, and are we listening? So, I'm going to cover just some things about what PED is saying in my opinion, and also give some opinion on whether I think we're listening or not, and how well I think we might be listening. Before I start, though, I want to just make a few acknowledgements. The first three are with USDA NALM, Terry Moody, Julie Wallen, and Sarah Tomlinson. They're responsible for aggregating all the NALM data that through collaboration with Iowa State University of Minnesota, University of California, Davis, we've been able to be involved in looking at that NALM data on a web-based platform that we'll get a chance to spend a little time looking at. Zach Weedby and Beatriz Martinez at University of California, Davis. Zach's the programmer guy. Beatriz is the director of the Center for Animal Disease Modeling and Surveillance at Davis that administrates BioPortal. Kate Mueller, Roger mentioned Kate, Brett Krim and Roger from Iowa State. Brett's the programmer guy there, and Kate's the person that gets the work done. Andres Perez at University of Minnesota. Andres, before Beatriz Martinez, was the director at Davis, California for the Center of Animal Disease Modeling and Surveillance. Andres has now moved on to University of Minnesota and a valuable participant in this collaboration. I want to break this down into kind of four pieces. Three pieces under what PED is saying. First, I want to just talk a little bit about our assessment in the cost of PED to the U.S. industry. Just spend a few slides talking about a way to listen using a news-based surveillance. And then a third way to listen, looking at the National Animal Health Lab Network data on the BioPortal platform. And then the fourth part, are we listening? I want to spend a little time on some ideas on opinions on what listeners do. So first, cost of PED. Steve showed this chart, and I think it's pretty profound. I mean, it looks like things fell off a cliff here, and in fact they did. You guys felt the pain of that. University of Minnesota has done an excellent job looking at numerator and denominator at the herd level for the impact of PED, and you can see the impact. It's very seasonal, but very profound. What we did last fall is we tried to start to compile some estimates on the impact of PED through our field team. But before we went to that step, what we did is we said, well, what do we think it is and where do we think it's going? And so what we did for our estimates in the fall of 2013 for the impact in calendar year 2013, about 2.7 million was our estimate, give or take. And we said we think that through various circumstances in a naive population, knowing that we don't know now what we're going to know a year from now, we think will be, for calendar year 14, about 5.5 million, give or take a million. And then calendar year 15, kind of looking further out, thinking that we're going to know a lot more about how to deal with PED than we know today. We're going to fix and plug some holes. And our national herd immunity across our 5.8, 5.9 million sows and corresponding pigs is going to be better. And so at that point, our estimates were about 2.5 million, give or take about 1 million in terms of impact, just looking ahead. We put together a model, and to do that model, what our objective was to just try and get a sense of what the production impact was and what it could mean to our business, what it could mean to the animal industry. And the inputs that we received, we got those from through our team in the field, from producers and vets looking at number of sows affected on a monthly basis, and the duration, some estimates on the duration of percent mortality of outbreaks. And so it's somewhat simplistic and relatively crude, and we'll see where that gets us in terms of numbers. We tried to look at both new break and re-break counts, and so specifically, did you have breaks, new breaks, did you have re-breaks on herds that had previously had breaks? Tried to break it down that way. Again, sows on a monthly basis, some estimates of the duration of a break in terms of weeks, mortality effect, and then wanted to get a sense of baseline mortality and baseline pigs per sow per year so we could subtract out baseline mortality and look at a PERS attributable fraction, if you will. Same thing for re-breaks. The other thing that I wanted to mention here, won't go into the detail of the slide, but it's just to make 3 points. First point is, I think speaks to some things Bob brought up in his presentation earlier, is that it's not just the acute mortality. A certain percent of farms, we wanted to be able to account for extended mortality for both break and re-break. We wanted to be also to make some estimates of a post-epidemic chronic mortality after acute, after extended. And then we also wanted to try and take into account a lag effect, or when you have an earthquake, you have the initial earthquake and then you have the aftershock, right? I would look at the non-productive day effect of PED in herds as more of an aftershock. The PED creates some additional non-productive days, which then you don't see the impact of those until later on when you're missing the litters that those non-productive days are responsible for. So after all of that, our estimates through July 2014 over a 16-month period extrapolated to U.S. industry scale is this number right here, about 7.4 million. And the components of that, breaking that down into epidemic attributable mortality, extended epidemic, post-epidemic, and non-productive day impact. And this is just a anonymous but ranked Pareto, and the top chart is the estimate of the percent of weaned pigs lost for annual production. So that's the percent of pigs that less than 100% that you would have produced had you not experienced PED. And you can see that across the systems and the practices that we were looking at, there's quite a wide range of estimated effect, at least based on the numbers that we've accumulated. And the bottom chart is the same chart. These do not correspond. It's not the same herds necessarily and systems that have the weaned pig effect as the total sow inventory effect. But this is the same kind of ranked Pareto on the percent of the sow base in that system and practice that was affected. And 100% is right here. And there are some systems that all of their sow base was affected plus re-breaks. There are some in here at 100% and less than 100% that certainly have some herds that didn't get affected at all. And there are some that are less than 100% that have break-affected herds and then a few re-break affected herds. Looking at the sow level, not the herd level, University of Minnesota data is looking at a numerator and denominator in terms of herds. We're a little less sophisticated than that. We made some estimates at the sow level based off of about a 5.86 million sow base. And the dotted line is the month-by-month estimates on number of sows affected. You can see this is a straight line because we really didn't start doing this until September of last year, and so we didn't have the detail going back, so we just averaged it out through that period and then started on a monthly basis after that. And the green bars is the estimate of the percent of the U.S. national herd that is as yet unaffected, and the red bars is the estimate of the cumulative affected herds. Certainly some of these herds have come and gone in terms of positive and gone negative again, but even if they've gone negative again, we're leaving them as affected at some point here. And so on a sow basis, our estimate right now is about 60% of the national herd in terms of sows as affected. There's always a danger in extrapolation, and fully confess that. But this may be high, it may be low, but it's probably in the same ballpark at least as what's really out there. From that, then we tried to compile some estimates on the number of pigs affected in terms of break and re-break total impact. Remember, that's the acute, the extended, the chronic, and then the non-productive day effect. And cumulative to this point, our estimate's about 7.5 million. Steve, that might be a little light. I don't know, but it's probably in the ballpark. But here we have our break estimates and then our re-break estimates in the lower kind of orange section here. And again, Minnesota has done a nice job looking at legitimate numerator-denominator at the herd level, and then cumulatives. Point here is that I think if you look at, in a meta-analytic sense, if you will, Bob, that there's similarities between these various estimates that I think we can get a fairly decent sense of what's going on. Okay, just briefly talk about PED news and database. And I'll set it up this way. PED news is something that is not news. A news-based analytic is not new. And it's also not new for BioPortal. A number of years ago, University of California, Davis started something called the FMD news. And it's been around for a number of years, where they would go out and sweep these websites, kind of look at everything they could find that had anything to do with foot and mouth disease globally. They would take that in, they would compile it, and then they would put it out as a news service, but then also compile it in a database. And so we sat down with them, we said, why don't we do that for PED news? And they said, sure, we can do it, we know how to do it. And so we'll look at a few slides of PED news. This is in the database itself, so all of the emails that you see that have the news listed, and you can go to the link, and or you can go to the translated link if it happens to be in non-English, that you get in the emails are compiled in this database. And in this database just shows where the country of origin of the news items are, and then this is just the total chart. And just a frequency diagram of the countries of origin. Almost 60% come from the U.S., about 15% from Canada, and so on. U.S. and Canada, by far, the largest source of the news stories. But what's interesting to me, and I think this is part of the intent of the news type approach long term, is to see if there's data streams like news stories or other types of data streams, and there's a number of them that you could look at, that correspond to what you see out in the industry for real impact in terms of affected herds. And I've just tried to line up August of 13 and August of 14, and crudely, a rough relationship between the magnitude of news stories about PED and incidence of PED over time. There's a lot of work to be done to make it more useful, obviously. Looking at other data streams is one of them. But something interesting enough, at least, to continue exploring. Most of the PED news subscribers are U.S. and Canada, but there's actually quite a few other countries that subscribe. You can get to the PED news through the ASV PED webpage. Also, it's on the Swine Disease Eradication Center website as an RSS feed if you want to pick it up there. Okay, next I want to go into the PED epidemic and looking at the National Animal Health Lab Network case data. And we're going to use the Disease BioPortal tool to do that. Some of these slides I changed. I did originally have swine delta coronavirus. You're going to see in the graphs it still says PDCOV. Sometimes I think we're getting as bad as anatomy professors where we have to change the name of things little every so often, but I don't think we're quite there yet. They seem to change it relatively frequently for something to do. So in that database, there are about 40,000 cases. These are not positive cases. These are total cases that includes positive and negative cases that are animal-based samples. It includes positive and negative cases that are environmental-based samples. So about 40,000 in there currently through July 28th. This is a chart of case submissions. You can see how PED has ramped up. You can see how swine delta corona kind of comes into the play at the towards the end of the first quarter of 2014. But by far, at this point, the vast majority of cases are PED cases. What this is looking at as across all of those cases, it's looking at a stack of total cases, and these are the negative case results. These are the positive case results. Just to say that total case submissions has been relatively flat for quite a few weeks now. You see this little dip here. That's the week of July 4th. And so there was fewer case submissions because of the holiday. This happens to be the Christmas period right here. Not that there's less PED during Christmas and seasonal ramp up. It's just people are doing other things at that time, obviously. The other thing that's interesting and I think intuitive is most of these samples are feces or fecal based. Okay, and what I've done here is we took all of the fecal oriented case submission types and oral fluid oriented case submission types. Environmental is sites and vehicles combined and so on, and tried to consolidate those into fewer categories. So the lion's share, fecal type samples, oral fluid type samples. And I think Roger mentioned that oral fluids has been a robust sample type for a lot of uses, PED and swine delta or porcine delta included. This is looking at sample type over time, and you can see that the fecal-based samples are here, the oral fluid-based samples here. These are the environmental-based samples, and then there's a few other various and sundry types. Blood samples are here, but there's just not a lot of blood or serum-based samples coming in yet. And this is looking at results overall, the database, predominantly negative cases, as you would hope for, positive cases here. Also through NALM, they report suspect and inconclusive. And so to get rates, we have to deal with suspect and inconclusive, and I don't think we necessarily have a good way of doing that just yet. And this is looking at the positive, negative cases over time again. Looking at state, and so this is not positives, this is total submissions based on the state of case origin. So it's not the diagnostic lab, it's not positive submissions. This is looking to the state from which the cases were submitted. And what's interesting is Minnesota has sites or origin of cases are where the lion's share of cases originate. Then Iowa, Illinois, North Carolina, the hog-dense states as you would expect. What's interesting here is even though most of the cases, the highest state of cases is Minnesota, the highest state of positives is Iowa, and these are positives here, and then the total is the total submissions. Illinois and North Carolina follow. The last thing I want to cover as the fourth basic topic is, are we listening? And I want to start with this quote. Ayn Rand, author, wrote Atlas Shrugged, had, I think, a quote that I very much appreciate. She said, "We can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality." And in this context, listeners don't ignore reality. Listeners suffer reality. Because if we ignore reality, the consequences are going to come whether we ignore or don't ignore reality. The consequences will be there. And if we're not ignoring reality, we'll be better prepared, obviously. So what is PED saying in a sense? I think PED is telling us, sorry guys, we cost you a boatload of money, but we're not the real problem here. And the rest of the statement, I think, for us is a listening statement. PED is still speaking here, Delta Corona. We're just helping you uncover your real problems. So you should thank us, in a sense. Hans Zinser was a medical doctor, spent some time at Harvard, and then before that, Stanford. Was also a very prolific author and said some very profound things through his life. One of them was in a book he wrote called Rats, Lice, and History back in 1934. And he said this: however secure and well-regulated civilized life may become, all these organisms and agents will always lurk in the shadows, ready to pounce when, in effect, stuff happens. And even in normal times, they prey on the weak and young and old, living along with us in mysterious obscurity, waiting for opportunities. For us, in what used to be a PED Delta Corona naive country, the opportunist saw an open door and took it. David Heyman with WHO said this back in 2006 in a bulletin for WHO. If you want to find the text of it, that's the reference, volume 84, number 2. He said, in today's world of rapid travel and transport, reintroduction of infectious diseases occurs not only locally, livestock and food products carrying infectious agents from country to country and from continent to continent, and I think we can say within the country, happens. Infectious agents carried by humans are often asymptomatic or in the incubation period, while those carried by vectors, livestock, and food often remain silent. Things can get in. We don't see or hear. Our sensitivity, our resolution of listening isn't sufficient, and they kind of get by whatever barriers that we might have in place. I also want to set the context for listening with a paper called Dilemmas in a General Theory of Planning. This is a paper from a journal called Policy Sciences that was published back in 1973 by some guys in planning, city planning, and in the design school at University of California, Berkeley, Rattel and Weber. And I'm just going to pull out a couple of quotes from that. These guys in this paper defined the parameters. They basically developed a concept called wicked problems. They defined the parameters of what defines wicked problems. And just a couple of comments pulled out from that paper. During the industrial age, the idea of planning in common with the idea of professionalism was dominated by the pervasive idea of efficiency. Okay, in pig production, I think we can also see that in ourselves. For many years, we've been all about efficiency, all about efficiency. And in that sense, planning was seen as a process of designing problem solutions that might be installed and operated cheaply. Sounds like us. But I think some of the things that we're seeing now and some of the things we've been seeing over the last number of years is we've become sensitized to waves of repercussions generated by problem-solving actions directed to any one node in the network. And I'll just throw out the example of going from single-site to multi-site and diffuse multi-site on a national scale. And we're no longer surprised to find it inducing problems of greater severity at some other node. I think we can take that and put it in terms of things like PD as an example. So we've been forced to expand the boundaries of systems we deal with, trying to internalize those externalities. What can we learn from a shift in industry structure, and what can we do about it? Okay, finish up with some what listeners do. And just my opinions on this. Listeners don't react heroically to surprises. They prepare contingencies to execute when they need to respond. Response, my opinion, would be much preferred over reaction. And I'll use this example. This is a sweep of GenBank. GenBank's a repository for a global repository for sequence data. And this is just looking at a pie chart of the S gene sequences in GenBank. About 53% from China, quite a few non-reported, which that's a problem, and Thailand, South Korea, Asia in general, and predominantly China. Now we'll look at it by year. Okay, we see 2001, somewhere here. Oh, sorry, my mistake, I'm down here. 2011, right here, sorry, 23%. Before that, 2010, 2009. So 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. And we did this in the middle of 2013. So this is probably less than a half a year of 2013. But you can see the scaling of the number of sequences being reported into GenBank for a PED virus by year. Is that a form of an early warning for us? Is that an indication that pay more attention to what's going on over here? They do it in the influenza world in ways like this. Listen what's out there and see what's out there and be better prepared. So one of the things that we're doing through a collaboration project with University of California, Davis, Iowa State, and University of Minnesota, along with National Animal Health Lab Network, is initiating a project to try and set that up using PED Delta Corona as the excuse, but taking it eventually to other agents, and having a country-level BioPortal database that uses things like GenBank as a source, and then also state and, if available, county-level sequence data, and state and, if possible, county-level noun data. Now, one thing to emphasize, for obvious reasons, not everybody can get to every level in a project like this. Okay, and so that's something that we're very cognizant of, that clearly needs to be set up properly. But that's the basic construct. I'm going to go ahead and skip through some of the detail of these. Next thing listeners do is they don't wait to respond. I think we have evidence that there's listeners in this country who have not waited to respond. Iowa State as an example, Vet Diagnostic Lab, jumped all over Delta Corona and before it PED. University of Minnesota Diagnostic Lab, same thing. Very in tune with what's going on across the industry and very responsive to what's going on and responding appropriately. ASV as an organization jumped on this, is a great source of information. Swine Disease Eradication Center at the University of Minnesota, another group that has done tremendous work since PED was first identified and helped us learn and learn quickly. National Pork Board has become a great resource. They've got access to a lot of excellent educational information and very supportive about dealing with PED and Delta Corona. Next thing is listeners do is they have a well thought out plan B. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I do want to throw this quote out there from a mathematics and physics professor of all things. The most successful people are those who are good at plan B. And I think if we do a little self-examination, it should make it clear that we need a better plan B. Another thing listeners do is that they do not ignore the elephants in the room. And to kind of set the context for that, this is a guy named James Bond Stockdale, Ross Perot's running mate from the years when Ross Perot was running for president. But for me, he said something that Jim Collins put in his book, Good to Great. I really like this idea of confronting the brutal facts but never giving up. And I just want to touch on the confront the brutal facts part. For us, we have to confront the elephants in the room. And the elephants in the room are in the external introduction risk area. How did it get in this country? What are we doing to plug the holes? And I think there are a lot of things that are being done. I guess the thing that we have to appreciate, and the black swan came up earlier, what we tend to do is we tend to deal with introduction risks that we think are the biggest risk, which there's nothing wrong with that. But the other thing that we have to do and take into consideration is sometimes the biggest risks are not the most costly risks. Okay? Second thing, elephants in the room category, internal circulation risks. Now, I won't talk about internal circulation risks in the context of a site. I'm going to talk about it in the context of the country. Okay, the only difference between a site and the whole country is scale. Sites want to keep stuff out. The country wants to keep stuff out that we don't have and don't want. Sites need to deal with circulation within a site. The country needs to deal with circulation within our country. The only difference is scale. One of our internal circulation risks is obviously movement. No one here would believe that if it had not been PED, but instead had been foot and mouth disease or African swine fever, that we would still have the same freedom to move animals as we do today. What I'm not suggesting is that we stop movement for PED. What I am suggesting is we need to have a very well thought out plan B for how we're going to manage that and those risks. The next thing listeners do, they don't keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. Listeners learn all the time. And we're talking about the disease behavior game. We need to learn as we're young. We need to learn when we're old. And we need to learn not just from our peers, but from, I'm not sure who's learning the most in this chart here. I think it's probably this guy over here. We need to learn from the next generation. A number of years ago, I gave a presentation in this same meeting called The Golden Rule of PRRS Control. And it was taking the Old Testament Golden Rule and applying it to PRRS, transmit unto your neighbor as you would have your neighbor transmit unto you. I think the same thing applies in a general sense to any disease that we want to name. And just to revisit area-based control, which is practicing the golden rule. Producers and veterinarians working together with their neighbors and business partners so that together they achieve a greater sustained improvement in health and productivity in their neighborhood than anyone can achieve on their own. Working together, we can do that. Dan's giving me the high sign, so I'm going to speed up. 5 minutes? Or over 5 minutes? Just go. All right. So, the 5 C's of the Golden Rule, comprehensive. We can't just pick around the edges of it. Communication, cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. Won't go into detail of that, but we look at those as the 5 C's. Now, there's a number of area-coordinated approaches across the country. I don't know that we, for every disease that we already have, that we want it to be pushed on us as an industry. I think instead what we want is we want to do it ourselves from a grassroots. Cooperation at the policymaker, governmental, and official level makes total sense. We have to live together on the same turf. But I think for our own good, as well as the good of our industry and consumers, we need it to be more of a grassroots effort. And so my opinion is we don't need just more projects like this. We need a lot more projects. They need to be bigger, they need to be more connected, and they need to be broader. Okay, almost done. This is a big, hairy, ugly-looking kind of chart that I want to communicate one thing. All of the database evaluations that we looked at in this presentation fit inside this box right here. Some things that Roger mentioned with diagnostic labs fit up here, and some other things that Roger talked about lead to this, where connecting the labs with permissioned data to go into tools like BioPortal, to support updated dynamic risk and risk assessment, to connect with other things like production data, environmental data, and operations-based data, capturing operations-based data with the people from the people who are responsible for executing the tasks through a smartphone, tablet-based format, so that it's all more real-time and electronic and has analytic usefulness, not just for researchers that sit in front of their computer screens in the ivory tower, but for people out in the field that have to make good decisions fast, and for people that are responsible for the progress of businesses. Last couple slides. We can think ourselves to death about how stuff should be done. But it's easier to act our way into a new way of thinking, to borrow the quote from Jerry Sternin, than to think our way into a new way of acting. Sometimes you just got to go. You just got to get started and start getting stuff done and not just think about it. Benjamin Franklin saw a similar thought from a few years earlier. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I learn. I think an area-coordinated approach is something that all of us can be involved in. And someone, Steve, I think maybe someone asked about why bacon was so expensive. Here's your answer right here. It's meat candy.